trying to explain the importance of properly funded art to people who are only concerned with making money is like trying to sweep the ocean with a broom. What does that mean for the future of entertainment if we're actively living under a government that is pro-censorship?
It seems like that's sort of where we're headed. Is this one of those situations where the system is about to explode?
Every 10 years or so, we remove one really load-bearing rule, and we wonder why that, and then we learn why that rule was there.
Hi, welcome to the show.
And welcome to XYZ.
We are Christy and Faith, the XYZ portion of the Wonder in the Weeds podcast, which might just become the podcast these days because it seems to be more people want to hear from both of us than one of us, which
it's hard to do a solo podcast.
It is. I'm not such a yapper like you. I think you'd be able to do a solo.
Love to run my mouth.
Anyway, hi folks. We're here today to talk about news, actually. Something from the news.
We can't say that.
We can't say that. It's probably copyrighted.
Not ours.
Well, we do love them so much.
Chelsea Brothers, please don't strike us.
Full disclosure, neither one of us have a ton of information on this topic. We're mostly just off the dome from what we've heard.
I've read a little bit.
Yes, she has definitely read more than I have. But I have, as a do, listened to my various news podcasts to get some information and also done some reading up. But I am a little bit confused by all of it. But mostly I'm confused about how it's even a possibility. And also I'm not sure any of it is logical or reasonable in the current world we live in because of who's in charge of things. Because nothing is logical or reasonable with this person in charge of things. So we're going to talk about the Netflix merger acquisition with / Warner Brothers. Actually, I guess it's a Warner Brothers acquisition by either Netflix or the default someone else.
Paramount.
Thank you. Paramount Skydance. If you don't know what we're talking about, in 5 seconds
read a book.
No. See? Mean.
Sorry. I just thought that would be really funny.
Meanwhile, or listen to a podcast.
That's not who I am at all, dear listeners. I just thought that's just really fun. Sometimes that's just funny to say.
Anyway, if you don't know what we're talking about, in the vaguest and shortest of terms, Paramount is being acquired, sold, something, maybe.
Warner Brothers.
Sorry. Warner Brothers, the movie house.
Distribution,
but also they make them too, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
production.
They're like one of the oldest production
Warner
companies.
Brothers.
God.
In 5 seconds or less, Warner Brothers is either going to be purchased by either Netflix or Paramount Skydance.
Thank you.
That
HBO's in there somewhere too.
HBO is a subsidiary of Warner Brothers.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
The bid that Netflix put in is for both Warner Brothers Discovery and HBO Max. So
I can understand why I got the names all mixed up.
Yeah, no, hey, it's a lot, and they're all like the same words.
True story.
The way I'm pulling up my phone because I watched a video on it and I want to cite the source that I found this video on.
And real quick, let me tell you our perspective. So she is coming at this as an artist in the film and television and theater industry. Goodness.
The girls are fighting.
Dogs.
By the girls, I mean our dogs.
The dogs. So she's coming at it from as an artist, an emerging artist. Writing, directing, acting, you name it, whatever, in TV and film, possibly. I am coming at it as a consumer of all of the mediums, TV, film, but also streaming versus theater. So I have a whole lot of thoughts about that too. So it's somewhat generational, but it's also generational because of the roles, due to my role. Because of the
due to my role.
That's another one that we probably can't.
Can't quote that.
This is the terminally online version of our podcast.
This is XYZ.
Quoted 3
terminally
memes.
online.
Yeah, 1 TikToker and 1 podcast.
Yes.
Football playing duo. Anyway,
And I'm sure they would love to be described as that. A podcast football, known Super Bowl winners, the Kelsey brothers. Podcast football playing duo. That makes it sound like they're a Muppet act.
It could just be Taylor Swift's husband. At least I'm, giving him his own personality.
Yeah. I mean,
Anyway.
won't be his own personality for very long.
So we had some things to say about this,
Yes.
as you might imagine. And we were like, why not just turn the camera on? So here we
Turn
go.
the mics on.
So Faith has all kinds of notes and things,
Yeah.
so I'm going to let her start.
So the brief overview of the situation, as best as I have researched it, and always happy to be wrong, and happy to learn more, is Warner Brothers Discovery there was a bid, and the video that I learned all these exact numbers from is called Morning Brew on Instagram. You can find them. They're like a business news centered platform. She drew like a bunch of diagrams, the woman
Oh, I love
doing
diagram.
it. Loved a diagram. Netflix put in a bid to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, which would include HBO Max as well. For I believe it was $27.75 a share. I might be getting those numbers a little funky, but roughly $27 a share. This made Paramount Skydance, we all remember them from the Jimmy Kimmel of it all earlier this year, angry because they put in a separate bid. And what Paramount Skydance is now trying to do is a hostile takeover of Warner Brothers Discovery.
See, I didn't even know this.
I learned this today. Paramount Skydance is now trying to essentially buy out shares of the Warner Brothers Discovery's current board so that they then own over 50% of the company already. And then they can install an entirely new board to get the Warner Brothers Paramount Skydance merger approved. Because the current Warner Brothers board would rather be acquired by Netflix as opposed to being acquired by Paramount Skydance.
My understanding of that is because part of the reason anyway is that Netflix is saying, as you do to try to make a deal happen, they're saying that they will leave the film distribution or the I can't remember what they called it, but basically movie theaters alone. They wouldn't sort of dismantle that part of the business. We all know that's a lie.
Yes.
But the Paramount is essentially the same company. So like I would imagine there's some antitrust stuff there. I don't know. Again, I'm just a trauma therapist, folks. I don't know, shares and acquisitions and all of that stuff, but I do know enough to think like, how come all these companies are just allowed to buy all these other companies? That doesn't feel like it's a very good deal for consumers. Like I remember 10th grade economics class and we were told that monopolies were a bad thing. And it's
y'all remember the robber barons?
Right. It seems like that's sort of where we're headed, no matter which one of these goes through, because in one case, it really is just a monopoly. It's one company that does the thing, buying another company that does the thing, and inevitably laying off probably half the workforce, and then trying to do it all cheaper than they were already doing it. Or it's another thing that does a similar thing, but doesn't really want to keep doing this one thing, and so they'll get rid of it ultimately, which hurts the consumer, I think, as a kid who grew up going to the movie theaters and as an adult who still really loves the movie theater experience and raised her kids in movie theaters. That makes me sad. And also I understand financially the movie industry is tricky right now anyway. And I don't really like what's in theaters these days anyway as a result of that. So it's a complicated mashup of different players and parts and pieces that I think really just sucks for everybody except Netflix and or Paramount Skydance. So,
well, I can
Here we
give
are.
you a little bit of backstory on
Please.
how movie theaters, the steady decline of movie theaters, as it was best explained to me. And again, happy to be wrong. For, let's call it the past 10-ish years, the way that movie distribution has worked, and the way that movie distribution works is that production companies, your Discoveries, your Warner Brothers Discoveries, your Disneys, your Paramounts, your MGMs, those the the production companies of yore, the people that used to do the DreamWorks, like before the movie, you'd see the credits, those guys. You are essentially renting theater space from a movie theater, an AMC, a Cinemark, something of that nature. As a local theater, we had a Bowtie Cinemas growing up. You as a production company are renting a theater space under the assumption that your movie will sell enough tickets to offset that cost. That's why movies run, a movie's time in a theater is determined by how well tickets sell. Because if it sells for, if you only rent 2 weeks and it sells out every single night of those 2 weeks, hey, maybe you can afford to rent it for a third week and have more people get to go see it in the theater. I believe this started with Disney, but I'm not entirely sure. Is Disney and AMC now have a partnership where I'm making up the numbers here, but let's say 5 out of every 12 AMC theaters will go like individual movie theaters in an AMC complex will go to exclusively Disney properties. So that's Disney, that's Pixar, that's Marvel movies. Disney owns National Geographic,
Yeah.
Disney owns Hulu. So 5 out of 12 movie theaters are now exclusively to Disney properties. And that means that instead of renting out one of 12 movie theater spaces in an AMC, you're now suddenly only renting out one of 7 because Disney has enough money to put full purchasing power on 5 movie theaters.
Yeah.
That then makes it harder for smaller indie or film companies to rent out a theater space.
Well, it also just makes it hard for movie production companies. Not hard. Let's be clear. There is an astronomical amount of money changing hands in all of these scenarios that we can't even comprehend. But if you're talking about just profit, then it makes it harder to make a profit because your movies are getting more expensive to make.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing and I think you'll probably talk about this. We don't need to, like, the ins and outs of it aren't. First of all, they're not even really clear right now because who knows? The way that it used to work in the olden days, the good olden days, would be that the Department of Justice would have some say in maybe if it was an antitrust case or a monopoly or what are those things. Who the heck knows what's going on now? And I don't really understand enough of the legalities and the federal government's role in a normal setting. I don't fully understand. So now I really don't pretend to understand anything. But the president says he has a say in how this all goes. So we'll see what happens. It seems to me whoever's going to pay him the most money is the one who's going to get the deal. But that's an issue for another day.
Feels illegal, no?
My thought on so many things. My thought on all of it is as a consumer, and then I'm going to get Faith's perspective because I also think of all the people in the movie industry that aren't the actors, that aren't the like $1 billion, let's really stop throwing billion around like our federal government does. The millionaires who make movies and the big stars that we know their names. There's a ton of other people that are involved in the movie making process that this is going to really affect harshly. No matter what the outcome, I think it's going to affect people harshly. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about that because as a consumer, I know how it's going to affect me. But like, what are you worried about either side? And in either case, what are you worried about for like the grips of the world and the writers, the directors, the teams of people that do all of the things on sets and all of it?
Well, I think it's going. And so much of this is like everyone is still living in a post-COVID landscape as much as they're like trying not to. Like the entertainment industry is one of those jobs where you actually have to have people in the room in order to do it. And not just like actor to actor, actor to writer. You need grips, you need camera operators, you need the craft services team, you need the hair and makeup people, you need lighting, you need props, it's a very human driven industry. Less so than a more quote unquote like corporate job where like you can be in your house and still take meetings and still do things. So it's one of those, it's a slightly rare-ish industry where you kind of have to have people in the room in order to get it to actually happen, more or less. I don't know, maybe corporations are like that too.
No, I think that's a great way of putting it. You have to have people in the room because when movie makers decide we want to save a little bit of money by filming this in Turkey or wherever, then all of the people that live in Los Angeles that do those jobs no longer have that job, and or they have to go figure out how they're going to live in Turkey for 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it
Yes.
is. Which chances are they're not going to do that because it's too expensive for them, and certainly the movie company is not going to pay for them to do it. They're going to
Exactly.
hire local talent, and so great, that's great, boon for that economy, but it's not helping Americans in their jobs. And I know anyway, I'm not going to talk about our
Yes.
current regime, but go ahead.
But that's the like, when you have companies that seem very, I described it as like trying to explain the importance of properly funded art to people who are only concerned with making money is like trying to sweep the ocean with a broom. Like, first of all, work across the country is undervalued, across the board. There are very few people, I would argue, who are getting paid the appropriate amount of money for the work they're doing, regardless of what kind of field you're in. So that's thing number one, is like almost unilaterally wages need to increase. And when you have um, companies who are so focused on the bottom line, they're willing to acquire other companies, it means that not only is consumer protection at stake, but protection for the workers is also at stake. Because it does mean that, like, is Netflix gonna, if this Netflix deal goes through, is Netflix gonna go in and clean house at Warner Brothers Discovery? They say they're not, but are they? Like, we don't know. So that might mean that there's, 50 people or more, hundreds of people who are out of jobs, who had jobs 2 days ago because Netflix came in and decided to clean house. It also makes me nervous because, let's say, Paramount Skydance is able to do this hostile takeover of the Warner Brothers board. They already tried to do censorship. Like, the government tried to censor Jimmy Kimmel under a Paramount Skydance merger. What does that mean for the future of entertainment if we're actively living under a government that is pro censorship, and one of the biggest entertainment distributors now is owned by a company that was not unwilling to cave to censorship demands from the United States government? So that's thing one. And I think, as far as like the artistic merits of it go, it's just going to be so much harder for people to get jobs and keep jobs. And it's going to make more and more production companies risk averse. Because if we go back to that movie theater analogy, if you're only able to rent out one movie theater for 2 weeks, you're not going to want to pick something that isn't going to sell tickets.
Right.
And
That's why we get all this stupid Marvel movies.
yes, that's why we get Marvel. That's why, like, and I think with this kind of acquisition, it's just going to make it that much harder to get an original movie. I was talking about
With
this
real human
with
being
real
actors.
human being actors, that's written by real human being actors. I was talking about this with a coworker, and he brought up the movie Sinners. And he was like, that was an original story that got through. And I was like, you're right. That was an original story that got through. But that was directed by Ryan Coogler and starring Michael B. Jordan. That those are names in the theater world. That Creed, Michael B. Jordan was in Black Panther. Like, that's a movie star and a very well respected action movie director. Still a big risk creatively for both of them, and still one of the best movies I've ever seen. And yet, you couldn't have gotten Sinners made with an unknown. You couldn't have gotten Sinners made with somebody on the scale it was made. You probably could have made it,
Yeah.
but you couldn't have gotten it to the scale it was at if it didn't have a well-respected actor director team at the head of the. And because of that, now this is where Ryan Coogler is very smart. Because of that, Ryan Coogler cast an unknown as the other lead opposite Michael B. Jordan. And that's great, but you don't get a lot of Ryan Cooglers in this industry who are willing to, because they know they've got a safe bet in Michael B. Jordan, make come on, man. Take a risk on an actor who, I believe Miles Canton, that was his first movie role ever. and he did a phenomenal job. But I think those are the two big things that concern me, is that it's going to make it, not only does it mean we're going to get less interesting movies made because studios aren't going to be willing to take a risk, but it's going to be that much harder to break through as an artist because it's now going to become about reliable marketability. And
so I have two thoughts on this, that one of them just came to me while you were talking. So one is, is this just a lose-lose situation for consumers and artists in general, no matter which way it goes?
Well, yes.
Or is this, and this is the hopeful part of me that has to wake up every morning, that's doing this also with our federal government. Is this one of those situations where the system is about to explode, at least as we know it? This whole idea of, are we even going to get movies in movie theaters anymore? Are people even going to make movies in movies anymore? If this kind of blows that model up, and maybe, Netflix tries to make everything streaming, or Paramount tries to do whatever, Paramount only make, Christian right-wing movies or whatever it is, are there enough people in the industry with enough money that they can sort of remake the industry? Because right now, I'll be honest, I haven't been to a movie theater in a long time. Faith just talked about Sinners, but other than that, I can't think of a single thing. Oh, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio.
One battle after another.
One battle after another. I could have maybe gone and seen that too. But I went to see the Bruce Springsteen movie, and before that, the last one I went to see was the Bob Dylan movie. And the only reason I went to the movie theater for those two was because the music. Well, the Bruce Springsteen was full on nostalgia. That's the only reason I went to that. But the other one, I went to the movie theater because it was a musician's movie, and I wanted to hear it in Dolby. And so my point is, there hasn't been a ton of stuff in theaters that I'm excited about. My kids, my especially the other two, there's Marvel, there's Star Wars, there's all of that stuff that they love to go see.
And now they
could it be, yes, now one of them's just a movie theater guy, but could it be that this sort of dismantles everything in such a way that it gets rebuilt in a way that's maybe more beneficial to both artists? And I mean, not to the scale that it is now, because that kind of money only comes from production companies, but I think of Kevin Smith and the movies he makes, and he's those are incredible movies, and he just bought his own theater.
Yeah.
So are there ways that this could be, I don't know, maybe we go back to the way it was when I was a kid, in the sense that it wasn't so massive. Not everybody got to see everything. They played at art house movies, and then you bought, or art house theaters, and then you bought it on a DVD if you wanted to, or you rented it on a I don't know. I think there's a world in which maybe there's Phoenix rising from the ashes in this way a little bit too. And
there have been a couple of jokes about streaming services just want to reinvent cable. They're we're doing this acquisition so that you have everything you need all in one place.
Yeah.
And it's wait a second, didn't we have that?
Right.
But I think the it might just all go back.
Pause.
I saw, yeah. This was about sports betting, but it's kind of applicable here too. It was a Instagram post that was every 10 years or so, we remove one really load-bearing rule, and we wonder why that, and then we learn why that rule was there.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels a little bit like that right now with all these acquisitions, is that every 10 years or so, we remove one real load-bearing rule. Somebody is oh, well, cable is so difficult, or people don't want to go out to the movie theater. We've all got DVD players now. What if we just all got 3 DVDs sent to your house? It'd be awesome. And then it's well, people don't my siblings and I talk about go buy physical media again, because we started seeing this even before the merger. Streaming services, Netflix specifically, is guilty of just deciding it doesn't want to house something anymore and letting a contract expire. And then all 7 seasons of Gilmore Girls, where does that go?
Yeah.
And people will tell you well, if nobody's interested in them, then why does Netflix have to house them? Shut up. someone is interested in them. And to have a monopoly on what is where can I find this stuff? That to me is scary is too harsh of a word, but that's like kind of sad that like, your favorite TV show. I mean, I remember when I was babysitting and I used to make all the kids watch PBS Kids because I loved those shows. And I was like, you know what? You're 18 months old. I'm going to put on Martha Speaks because I liked Martha Speaks when I was a kid and I like it more than, whatever like YouTube video you're watching of a bunch of imaginary balls fall into a hole. So that like, that kind of mentality, I feel like we're starting to shift that way anyway. Of like, in 10 years from now, everybody's going to have all those cases of CDs that you just found that are like, everybody. I texted my sister the other day. I was like, why do I want an iPod? Like, I just want I want to be able to buy music and store it somewhere and bring it with me. And I want to be able to actually know that I own the music. Not that like, the music is mine, but like, that they can't take it from me. They can't just decide like an artist or otherwise. I had I Instagram DM'd an indie artist one time and was like, hey, this is kind of a cold call, but what happened to all your earlier albums? They're like not really on Spotify anymore, and I'm wondering if there's a place that I can get them. And he was like, hey, thanks for reaching out. They're all still available on Bandcamp, but I wanted to go in a new direction creatively, so I took it all off streaming. And that's super cool. Being able to go in a new direction creatively. But I was like, oh dang, I gotta get a Bandcamp account so I can buy this album.
Yeah.
And so I think we're kind of already starting to see the turn towards like go buy more DVDs, go buy more physical media. But I'm curious to see because like Netflix now has no real investment in making sure their movies can be watched forever. Like, there's a little bit of like, it feels like to me that more now production companies aren't interested in longevity as far as like film and television and even music to some extent goes. They're interested in capturing like the cultural zeitgeist and winning, all the Oscars in that one year. Or Emmys or whatever. And then if nobody talks about them again in 3 years, well, that's okay because they recouped. They made all their money back on that investment anyway. Whereas like, if you think of movies like Oscar award-winning movies that we consider like classics, I can't really think of any Oscar-winning movies from the past 10 years that have any kind of cultural staying power the way a movie like The Godfather does, or the way a movie like even Lord of the Rings for lack of a better one. Whereas like, and maybe that was within the last 10 years, man, I'm a fool.
I was gonna say, I feel like I don't know enough, and your brother would probably shut this down immediately with like 3 top. He would be like this one, this one, this one.
But like,
but I understand your point.
Yeah, and truly like, what won Best Picture last year?
Yeah,
do we?
But I don't ask me. I'm terrible at that. I can't remember the book I just read that I loved.
Yes,
but I think this is a good sort of generational tie-in because this idea of buying media, we, Gen X specifically, I know we kind of struggled a little bit with the technological shifts in music specifically. Well, really movies too, I guess, because we went from theaters to Netflix, renting the DVDs on Netflix or going to Blockbuster and then having them delivered to your house.
Redbox.
Yeah. That was later.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that, again, this is something that I was a little more open to from my artist children saying, hey, when you stream, like I fully embraced first my iPod, then Apple iTunes, it was called, and then I went to Spotify. And then my kids were like, hey, the artists don't really do, like, they don't get paid well on Spotify. And then I started learning that about streaming too. And anyway, we did it as convenient and because it was like the latest technology. And in some ways, Gen X gets crap because we don't embrace the latest technology. But in other ways, when we do embrace it, and then we're learning from our kids, like, actually, no, we're going to go back to DVDs. I mean, I have a kid upstairs. I'm pointing upstairs. My youngest kid is like, he had like a an old handheld Nintendo game system that was my sister's from like 1999 or something like that. And he now has a CD collection and a DVD collection. Well, actually, I guess Blu-ray collection. Like he has really gone into owning. And for a while, it was like a retro thing. He just wanted like, old stuff. And now, though, I think it's a little more to your point of like, I want to own these things because I don't want someone else to be in control of my listening or viewing pleasure. And so maybe this is a sort of generational shift that this conversation has spurred, which is how are we consuming this art? Going back to the consumer side of it, how are we consuming this art? Are we consuming it in a way that's actually rewarding the artists who made it, or is it rewarding some? And I think in music specifically, it's been this way. It's a tale as old as time that the artists don't make as much as the production companies. But in the sort of like on the precipice of AI and everything that could completely change, what's our role as consumers for protecting the artists and the arts and protecting our own access to the artists and the art? Do we really want two companies being in charge of all of the media we consume? Because that's about what it's, that seems to be where it's heading. Maybe 4 companies in charge of all the media we consume.
What's that Onion headline that's like, only 6 companies remain?
Yes. Yeah, I think if that's another Parks and Rec line too, that like Exxon.
Verizon, Exxon, Chipotle.
Yeah, it's the one company. Anyway, I think that's a conversation to be had on another podcast because you've been listening to us for too long right now. But to talk about how do you consume media in what, not only like in what venue, but also like what are you taking in, where are you getting it from, where is your information coming from, and do you actually know where the information's coming from when you go up the line of who's making it, who's writing it, who's distributing it, all of that stuff. And I think this is where an open communication between the two comes in really handy because she knows things I don't, and I know things she doesn't, and I remember things that she doesn't too. So, anyway.
And I think if you're like, artists are always going to make stuff. Like, and I think the tricky thing, and this is maybe for a whole nother episode, but like it is kind of innate to my person that I would be creative. Like I was gonna find, if I didn't decide to make it my job, I probably would still be like trying to take classes or write or something. Like it was I was kind of always going to end up this way. And I think sometimes that leads to like a little bit of exploitation from like production companies or things like the exploitation of like passion, for lack of a better word. But also in a moment like this, for consumers, particularly if you're like young and worried about being an quote unquote ethical consumer, of like, oh my gosh, how can I, there are, there are more ways to support artists than the world would like you to believe, because the world would like you to believe the best way to support the artist is to approve the Netflix Warner Brothers merger. But there are ways to like, and it might require a little bit more work. Like it might be like, oh, I have to, actually go find the indie movie theater and it's, 20 minutes away from me instead of 10 minutes away from me. Or I'm, even spending 10 minutes scrolling through Netflix and like actively searching up the movie you want to watch as opposed to just like clicking around and clicking the most recent thing. But the art is always going to be made. It's just a matter of like being willing to look. The art is always going to be made and the artists are always going to talk about it. One thing about artists, we want you to come see our stuff. And it might not be through a traditional venue, but it will still ideally happen.
So look for opportunities to support her.
Yes.
And don't just wait for somebody else to tell you what those opportunities are.
Yes.
All right, that's it. We got to end with our wonder of the week. I got to think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right now. I think, so here's what I'll think. We moved out here to the Midwest, and everybody that we told, first of all, we moved from the Northeast. So it's not like it was warm where we lived. But for some reason, when we told everybody where we were moving, their very first reaction, whether they were from here or there, it didn't even matter. Even the people who were from here were like, ooh, it's cold. Ooh, it snows. Are you ready for it? Oh, you haven't been here in winter yet. It's like, no one had a nice thing to say.
Yeah, way to sell us on your talent,
including
my
the people
guy.
who are actually from here. Yeah, it didn't matter. From the Northeast or from Minnesota, everybody was like, oh boy, the winners. And they fully embrace them out here. I mean, not everybody. I know there's plenty of people who are hiding in their homes right now, but there are plenty of people. I went to a Christmas market outside in like 12-degree weather with snow coming down. It was beautiful. It was like Bryant Park in New York City, if you've ever been, on a much smaller scale. But it was like that, and it was great. And we bundled up and we had a great time. I know that there's like the launch of the cross-country ski season is happening in a couple days. There's like 20 other Christmas markets or holiday markets you can go to. There's a ton of stuff to do outside, and it has been snowing for weeks. It feels like at this point, not really, but it's been snowing forever. It's frigid cold, and yet nothing has really stopped. And so the wonder for me is that A, they don't quit when it snows, and B, I'm not quitting when it snows. It's shocking because I used to just never leave my house. My kids' friends' parents knew, like, if it ever snowed, they'd be like, we'll take the Kings out sledding because their mom's not gonna go. Like, they just knew it was not my jam. And so I am kind of in awe of my own self this week that I'm just embracing it and getting out as much as I can. And I bought the dog a coat so I can take him for walks, and I have, boots that have great tread on them so I can get out in the ice and snow. And it's just like mindset. You gotta, I could be miserable. It would be very easy to be miserable, but what's the point? I can't change the weather, so I might as well change the way I react to the weather. And that feels like a little bit of wonder. So what's up for you?
I've rediscovered some old music that I loved when I was a freshman in college.
So long ago.
It feels like long ago. It's not like 4 years is a short amount of time. Anyway, this is a generational divide thing.
I'm just laughing as you're talking like you're like some old grizzled soul.
Well, I think
it's like when we talk about athletes being so old.
Oh yeah, they're 27. Past brag. I think the reason it feels like I'm an old grizzled soul is because I re-listened to music that I loved my freshman year of college, and you can almost like taste the loneliness. Like its lyrics, like I think this song has a line, Casualty by Lawrence, the Shut Up, but this song has a line of like, when I'm losing the battle, you're just another casualty. No, I'm speaking it. But the line is like, when I'm losing the battle, you're just another casualty. It's about like a failed kind of relationship. And I was like, oh, dang. I felt pretty sad for like a good portion of time. And it's interesting to go back, particularly like now is the time when I would have been listening to it when I was like stupid homesick. And to think like, yes, I'm really glad I'm not that way anymore, but also to like have a little bit of hindsight and be like, oh, like it's going to be all right. And I know that can sometimes seem naive, but like to reflect on like the time when I was like, oh my God, I've never felt more lonely than in this moment. And to know that like, well, it takes some time, but it is eventually going to be all right. I've just been thinking about that a lot this week. So that's my wonder.
That's a good way to end. All right. Thanks for listening. Do all the things, like, subscribe, leave us a review. If you're listening to it as a podcast, then you just hear the dog scratching and
all the
chains going. I think this is our cue to be done because the dogs are done.
And if you have something you'd like us to talk about, leave a comment on YouTube, leave a comment on Instagram. We might not get to all of them, but we'll definitely get to some.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Until next time.